So talk to me, why do you feel we need a digital detox?
We need a digital detox because technology is all around us. We carry our technology with our smartphones. We have smartwatches, we might have smart clothing. We have smart speakers. All of our appliances are smart. So technology is all around us. We now have algorithms and we have artificial intelligence, and they're able to process information much faster. And so we're online all the time, and we can be online all the time. We can do anything. We can talk to anybody in the world and anything in the world. And it's like being in a sweet shop. You know, we can have chocolate all day long, but it's not sustainable for us, because if you take a step back and think, well, okay, who are we? Well, we're biological animals, and we're incredibly efficient biological animals in the same way that all other animals are. I once read a statistic that said the human brain takes about 1/1,000,000th of the power of a supercomputer with roughly the same processing power. And you're thinking, wow, that's incredible. But how do we do that? Well, over the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution of animals and ourselves, we've got this efficiency. So we need to sleep. In fact, even the dinosaurs needed to sleep. Virtually all animals need to sleep. There are a couple where they're not quite sure yet. They might rest one half of the brain before the other half of the brain. So we need to sleep. We need to eat well. Ironically, with technology that makes life easier for us, we now need to exercise. So we need to look after ourselves. When we're online, we're getting loads and loads of external stimulation. And I'm a great fan of Derren Brown and other great musicians. And it's wonderful how they're able to externally stimulate people. So at the end of the day, they just become followers of the suggestions and all the rest of it. So we need time to think. So we need time to ourselves. We need time to go inside ourselves. So sustainability is not sustainable being connected all the time. We can't do it as biological animals. It causes us stress and it has long-term health implications. So what we have to do is find a way of sustainably living and working in the world that we have, because we can't go back. And how do we do that sustainably? So digital detox is about creating that sustainability. And it's to try and make it simple. Digital detox is about going offline. It could be as short as 20 seconds to rest your eyes if you've been staring at a screen all day. Or it could be 10, 15 minute rest and recovery breaks, where you're just regathering your thoughts. You're going for a coffee, you're talking to someone else. Or it could be, a weekend away or a week in nature and all of those things in between. So digital detox is an enabler that allows us to create that sustainability.
Was there a time in your life when this became a challenge or a problem for you?
So my journey towards digital detox was a very long one, and it actually started off when I in my mid-30s, and I suffered stress. Of course, that was a long time ago, and nobody talked about stress. But I would go to work. I had a wonderful job, worked on loads of technology work first, but the heart rate would start to rise, and I started to get stars in front of my eyes, and a couple of times I passed out. I thought, well, this is not very good. I've got to pay a mortgage, look after the family and all those other good things. And after all the tests that were available, nothing found. So I thought, I don't know, perhaps I need to do some exercise. So I remember being a good swimmer, and so I went in the local swimming pool, 2 lengths of the swimming pool. I was wrecked. Long story short, I started swimming to get fit. I started taking lessons to learn the strokes properly. I started to race and picked up some county titles, one or two other things. And then I got talked into doing an Ironman triathlon, which I ended up doing 4. And it was during that the power of how we think changes what we can do. So then I sort of parked that, because all of a sudden I'd cured the stress problem, because my heart would go right up high and right down again, a bit like a sports car. And then in about 2000, probably 2010, first iPhone, 2007, I found that, like everybody else, I was on my smartphone a lot. I was on my laptop a lot. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't getting time to do the things that I wanted to do. And I thought, well, this is a bit odd. Why is this happening? And that led to lots of research into behavioral psychology. Let's be frank. Marketing does work. Nudging people to make certain decisions certainly works, especially when they're tired. And then I had an opportunity about 10 years ago to leave the corporate world of technology. And what did I want to do? So I started off thinking, well, what jobs should I apply for and go for the choose? And then I decided, you know what? I don't want to do any of that. I love technology. I love endurance sport. And I love the weird stuff that goes on in your mind, the psychology of your mind. So I should mash those things together, along with why are we always on their phones? So I created the Digital Detox Coach in 2018 because it may have been slightly ahead of the curve, but I could see as a technologist where this was probably going to go, and that sooner or later we're going to have to find ways of creating a more sustainable life.
What a journey. What a journey. What is it that, when you're coaching, working with people, what is it that people find the most challenging?
I think the most challenging thing is, let's say someone presents, I'm on my phone too often. But when you ask the deeper questions, it turns out that the smartphone's a comfort blanket. And actually there's something else. Now, everyone's different. That something else would be, they're just not happy with their life. They're not happy that they're not doing what they thought they would be able to do. They're not spending the time doing the things that they want to spend the time. So they're not really in touch with what it is that they really want to do. And the art of the coach is to help the client find out what it is they really want. Not to tell them, that's mentoring, but for them to discover what it is that they really want to do. So lots of things present themselves as, oh, I'm spending too long on my phone. But actually, technology is a comfort blanket. And the reason is, it's so easy. Everything online is easy. Technology makes everything easy. Real life is much harder and takes much longer. So online, instant gratification, whatever you happen to choose. Offline, a lot of hard work.
Those two worlds are polar opposites. It's interesting the way you share it like that, because it is. You literally could go to Instagram, scroll for a bit, and it does relieve a bit of stress.
Yeah.
And suddenly 20 minutes is gone.
Yeah.
Half an hour is gone. And it's unbelievable how much time can be consumed. But what is it? What's happening in that time? So if I'm scrolling endlessly on Instagram or another platform, TikTok or something, what's happening?
So the funny part of it is, and we discussed earlier that in fact it affects all of us, myself included. So I'm a great experiment on myself. So if we go online and we're looking at our favorite TikTok movies or whatever we're doing, we're being stimulated externally. We're being nudged to watch more. Everything is happening externally. So we can't pay attention to everything. We can only pay attention to a certain number of things. So if we're getting lots of external stimulation, we don't necessarily notice the time. I love this idea of pickpockets. How is it that a pickpocket can come and pick our pockets? Because when you watch a film of it, you can see him going into the pockets. Well, surely the person knows that the wallet's being taken or something else. But the answer is quite simply because they create a distraction in the mind. They bump into you, they distract you, they occupy your mind. Because we can't pay attention to everything, those signals don't get through. So when we're online, We're just scrolling, we're being prompted and nudged to flick the next video, or the next video automatically comes up. Or we've got a red notification. Oh yeah, let's do that. I mean, how often, and myself included, we go onto our phones and we want to check the weather because checking the weather. And then I think, oh, I better check my emails. I've got 2 email accounts. Oh yeah, I wonder what's happening on my business social media site. Or what's LinkedIn as well. And then before you know it, you think, do you know what? I've been here a while. I wonder what the weather is because I still haven't looked. and basically our short-term memories, we can't remember too many things in our short-term memory unless we work on those things. So if we go in just with a light thought, I'm going to check the weather, but we haven't really consolidated that as something we really want to do, then we may check the weather, but we may not. And we may spend more time. So coming back to digital detox is about creating environments where you can be more successful. So everybody loves a cat or a dog, TikTok video or YouTube video. And there's nothing wrong because that you can unwind, you can look at it. But if you, before you do that, you say, do you know what? I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes just relaxing, just doing this one thing online or these things online. But after 20 minutes, I'm going to come off. So you almost pre-plan. Then you're more likely to remember, it's 20 minutes. My time's up. I now can do something else.
You mentioned earlier about the person actually having some deeper, I don't know if it's issues or concerns or just some deeper desires within their life. And then almost like social media is stealing some of that. I imagine there's kind of guilt and a bit of shame that they're getting so distracted. What's the person feeling? Like what they...
There's this cultural acceptance now that it's acceptable for people to be on their smartphones. Now, I was on the train this morning and I looked around the train, everyone around me on their smartphones, buried into it, shutting the outside world. So there's a social acceptance that's grown up, is that we can all be on our smartphones, we can all be distracted. Attention spans. There's some lovely work by Professor Gloria Marco over the last 10 to 15 years about attention spans. And she did some in situ research with information workers. And in her research, the attention span was about 47 seconds before we start to be distracted by another screen or something else or some interruption. And if we don't get an interruption, we'll even interrupt ourselves. So with this constantly being distracted and this acceptance of being distracted, and we constantly think, we've got this desire to be busy. So we multitask. But the funny thing is, the brain can't multitask. The brain is serial processes. So we can only do one thing at a time using the same cognitive resources. So if we switch between tasks at work, then we have to stop doing what we were thinking about, and then start up again on the new subject. But because we do it so fast, it fools us that we can multitask. But when we're multitasking, we're not paying attention, really, to either what we're doing or the people around us. So if I'm watching telly and my wife asks me something, you know what, I hear, but I don't listen. It's because my brain can't multitask. And I know it can't multitask, so I have to stop watching the telly. Luckily with iPlayer and all the others, you can pause it. And I have to focus on what my wife's saying, otherwise I'll be in trouble.
At home with my wife, we have this thing, which is if someone's watching TV or something and something's on, we both naturally just do it, which is, would you mind pausing for a second, and then we can chat, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a conversation coming here.
Yeah.
Well, because it's no point competing with Suits or something else which is visually stimulating,
Yeah.
and you've got the last 20 minutes, half an hour of being interested in the thing, to then try and go, oh, by the way, can we chat about this thing? It doesn't happen. So it's a funny thing. We've kind of both naturally, we've never spoken about it, but it is like, would you mind pausing for a second?
Well, so listening is hearing. We hear because we have ears. The signals go to our brain. Listening is an active process of not only hearing the sounds, it's understanding the sounds, it's processing the sounds. And in conversation with somebody, you're trying to feel what the other person is saying. You're trying to take it internally to imagine what the other person is saying, so you can have an engaging conversation. So it's a very active process, listening.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I think a lot about sort of the way this podcast works, and you talk about active listening. The reason why it works better in person is because there's just the tonality of how you're communicating, the pace, everything in the way that you're communicating I can buy into, which is basically real life, essentially.
Yes, and your body language, your facial expressions. It's really, it's not superficial. Now, online Zoom calls and all of those other things, they were a lifesaver during the pandemic. So technology is a wonderful thing. But if we rely just on communicating using technology, because it's really more superficial than real life, then we don't get the full meaning. And I think the US Surgeon General produced a report the other year about the loneliness epidemic, where someone can have, thousands of connections online, but feel really lonely because they don't have that human connection. And we're social animals. And human connection is part of us feeling safe. If we don't have it, it causes us stress and anxiety. And so loneliness has implications in terms of long-term health.
Yeah, thinking about that. So someone's got a couple of thousand followers online, but they're not really so connected in the modern world, or not so connected in the actual real social world. Just put a post out, get 1 like, 2 likes. I can only imagine that just makes you feel even more isolated. No one's listening, no one cares. And it's the social media, I don't like to call it social media anymore, I like to call it marketing, because it is marketing. And ultimately, whatever you're following is a brand, and that brand is, selling a product or a service or something along those lines. And I think it's important for people to understand that it is marketing. But the social aspect's not very social. Not really.
No, you can meet people online, and you can then establish, good relationships. I did a TEDx talk, and the funny part of the TEDx talk was that I'd done a coaching course, and then I became an assistant. And so I assisted on another coaching course where you meet lots of people. And I met, who's now my friend and colleague, Anna Smith. And after she did the course, she said, well, should we work on something? So we worked on a few articles. And then she'd always wanted to do TEDx, and I wanted to do TEDx. So in the US, everything's much easier. Lots more TEDx's. And she said, oh, I've got one. Let's do a joint one. Nobody does a joint one. They are really complicated. It's synchronization and all those other great things. And so I said, yeah, we'll do that. It's a bit like when I entered the London Marathon and accidentally got in. And so I did this spiel and all the things that interest me. And then she sanitized it, submitted it. And she phoned me up and said, we've got in. I said, where is it? The Lake Superior State University in Michigan. And of course, you have to pay your own airfare and all this. I thought, oh dear, I've now got in. London Marathon all over again. So I went, and the first time that I physically met my colleague was on a Monday morning. We had the rehearsal on the Tuesday, and we went live on the Wednesday. But because I'd developed a public speaking memory technique, about remembering stuff. I trained her up online about how to remember things for the whole talk. So it has to be done from memory. There's no prompts, there's no cue cards, there's no anything. And so we rehearsed it, and I said, look, we might tell. If you get stuck, just look and smile, because I know your bit as well. Because I over 12 years I've learned how to do this, and so we went on live, and I started off to make it easier, and she was brilliant. She totally remembered everything. In fact, she was too good. And then the thought went into her mind, wow, this is going well. Colin's going to be really impressed. And then it went. And she turned and smiled. And then I filled in the missing bit. And people afterwards said, oh, that was well rehearsed. But we had that synchronization. So you can meet some wonderful people online, and they can go on to be good friends. And every time she's over in the UK with her husband, we meet up. So so you can, and perhaps this is the important thing. Technology and online technology can be a vehicle to expand connections, physical connections. So if you're watching, a video of a cat, why not several of your friends have an evening of watching cat videos, because you get the benefits of the physical connection and being online, and the entertainment of being online. So you can combine the two things.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we're this moment right now is a perfect version of that, which is, we met online, and then we're getting to meet in person and have obviously a real conversation. So I love that aspect of it, and it's also one of the beauties of being able to do a podcast, is the wonderful people, the stories that you get to meet. Let's go back to someone struggling with or feels like they've been online too much, or they're trying to get to somewhere new in their life. Like when we were talking about that was really interesting, how actually you're kind of like peeling back the onion of someone kind of like realizing actually the problem isn't the problem, actually something far deeper and far beyond that is the problem. Like, how do you, when you're working with someone, how do you peel that back, and how do you find that out?
So coaches use open questions, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper. The idea is that as a coach, you don't influence the answers. You merely get to, with the person discovers the answers. So the problem could be they're not happy at work. The problem could be, particularly for men in their later life, they used to be super fit. They used to play football, they used to do these other things, but now, no, they can't do it. So they may be dissatisfied with their, how they feel. They may be getting older. There's lots and lots of different reasons. The reason why I tie this up with digital wellbeing and digital detox is that it's only when you come offline and you get rid of the external stimulation that you can look inwards. What is it I really want? What is it that I don't like about where I am today? What is it that's going to make me happy, really make me happy? And that's a self sort of discovery process, and it takes time. And so the first thing you might think of, well, it must be this. A lot of people say, give me a digital detox coaching session like a fitness coach. And in fact, lots of American people ask that. And so, yeah, I can say, well, okay, what is it you want to achieve? What is it you want to do? Okay, for you, we'll start off with these type of digital detox exercises. I've got a lovely one called the Just One Thing exercise. You're only allowed to go online to do one thing. Then you've got to come on. There's loads of other, there's the boundaries one, where you protect your sleep. You don't look at news before certain time. So there's lots of things you can tell people, almost like a fitness coach. But as we all know about fitness coaching, beginning of January, we're all very keen, and then by February, the gyms start to clear and all of those sorts of things. But to have lasting change, you've got to change the person's internal model of the world. So, a little bit deep now.
I like it. Go, keep going.
What we see isn't really all there is. The reason why we can exist. Oops, I'm bashing the microphone. Well, the reason why we can exist in this world and survive is because of the way the brain has a model of the world. And it has a model of the world from our own perspective. So I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know what any other animal's feeling. I know there are objects, I know there are people, I know there are colours. But colours only exist for us in our mind. They're just wavelengths. And different animals can see different things, infrared, ultraviolet. They're just wavelengths. So we give meaning to our world internally through our model of the world. Now, our model of the world is created by all of our experiences throughout our lives. And it's pretty embedded. So our model of the world could include we always swipe on our mobile phones because we've done it millions of times. So if you're going to make a change, a lasting change, you've got to slowly change that model of the world in a slight way. And you change it by the person thinking, you know what, I really want to do this. Emotionally, I really want to do this. And then small steps. It's a bit like marginal gains that athletes do. Small steps, and it slowly builds up a slightly different model of the world. So lasting change comes from making all of those small steps, but it takes time. And the investment is, it's going to take time, it's going to be a journey. And you will get better. And underpinning all of this is, of course, that we learn throughout our lives. We have something called neuroplasticity. And we can learn, for example, we can memorize stuff. Now, if we've never memorized stuff before, we might think, oh, I can't do that. I can never remember anything. But slowly, over a period of time, we get better. Now, we may not be a memory expert, but we'll be better than we were when we play guitar or piano or do a particular sport. We get better because that's the way that humans are. So it's always about journey with these things. And it's the model, internal model of the world. So if we can change through coaching, the person can just slightly change the model of the world to be more in line of who they really want to be or who they think they are, then that's a success. And in order to enable that to happen, you have to be able to look inwards, and you can't look inwards if you have all the external stimulation from online activities.
So interesting what you're saying, because actually what you're talking about is you're going far deeper into someone's psychology, into someone's beliefs, into someone's mindset.
Yes.
To almost look at what preconceived, so how they already come to you and how do they already show up. You're almost going into that first, because it's almost saying the online thing, the technology thing isn't really the thing that's the problem. The action, the fact that you're spending too much online, or you're doing this, or it's internalizing as being a problem, you've internalized it as a problem. The interesting thing is, it's what you're talking about is mindset and beliefs and how people kind of coming to approach you. Just expand on that for me, because I think it's really fascinating.
So there's a lot of information on mindset, and a lot of the information is, yeah, but it's your mindset. You know, if you change your mindset, all of a sudden you'll be able to do something. So if we peel that back, mindset isn't just your conscious mindset. So in sport, we do a lot of self-talk. You do distance running. I do distance swimming and other things. And the way you talk to yourself matters. And you can get so far by positive talk. And you can then reinforce that and do all those other good things. But that's what you're consciously doing. The internal model of the world and all of your experiences and successes and failures that you've all had in your life, they're all in your unconscious mind, which is still your mind, but you don't consciously have access to it. So the changes that need to be made by individuals, if they want to go in a different direction, they have to really want to do that, is that internal. Now that's helped by the way you talk to yourself. So I might say, I need to come off I'm spending too long on rubbish on the timeline. I'll only spend 10 minutes because that's entertaining and it allows me to relax, and then I'll come off. Initially, you have to use conscious self-talk to do that, and conscious techniques to do that. But eventually, over time, you won't necessarily have to do that because they're being embedded like habits. And you can use habits because they're unconscious, tend to be unconscious things, to prompt you. So if you can create a habit where you always charge your phone in a different room, it makes it easier not to look at your smartphone late at night. So you create a habit and an environment that helps you. So for people to go deep inside themselves is a little bit more difficult than just saying mindset, because there's two parts to it. Well, self-talk is hard enough. The other part is also quite hard and it does take time.
Well, I do. I've done a lot of work over the last probably 4 or 5 years of that internal work. I think it's probably been the most transformational thing that I've ever done. And I will pepper this by saying it's not easy.
And I do it all the time. And you know what? Sometimes you have to use environments. I often say everyone should have a room or a part of their house that has no technology, and that no technology is allowed in there. So you can go in there, you might have some books, you might have some other things, but you don't have technology. You can just think. So you create an environment that triggers a certain behavior. Or you can, I swim with my sister. I swim with my daughter, swim with my daughter. And she's more disciplined than I am. And we go to the swimming club at Chelmsford, and we train there. If my daughter doesn't go because she's working late in London, wherever, it's quite hard to motivate myself to go. So you can motivate yourself by associating with other people. Again, that's an environment. If you want to make positive changes as well, who else is doing the thing that you would like to do? And who you're associating with, are they more associated with the habits you want to get rid of? So you create an environment that's more positive, that could trigger the new behavior. So you have all of these tricks, if you like, to help you succeed. The reason why environmental triggers work is that it comes down to the efficiency of the brain. It's very expensive in resources, consciously thinking about things. If we can do them enough so they become habits, then the resources they use, brain resources they use, is much less. I mean, many of us drive. We used to have to learn to drive consciously. Now, a lot of those activities are unconscious, so we can actually see what the road sign is saying, if there is any, it's so much easier. We might get a hold of conversation, but we will stop if it gets complicated on the road. So offsetting things to your unconscious habits is much more efficient.
It's really interesting. So I was listening to, I can't remember who said it, Gabor Mate. So anyway, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was looking at the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. Mm-hmm. And one of the stats was that we are the part that is our awareness is 5% of the brain, which is just a tiny fraction of it. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but and then 95% is the subconscious brain, which is running our heart, our liver, our processes, all those things which you don't consciously have to do. And they talked about driving, which was when we're driving the car, once you've done it for a while and you're no longer, you've learned how to press all the buttons and everything else, certainly not when you're at the very beginning, but certainly after a while, when you've done it for many, many hours, you're there, but it's not really your conscious brain because it's not required. Your subconscious brain knows what to do.
Yeah. There was a lovely episode of BBC Click, and they went to a research centre, I think it was Toyota, and they put some electrodes on people, and they were trying to work out how our unconscious mind could help improve driving. And so they were able to pick up in the motor part of the brain the initial signals of someone wanting to turn before the person was consciously aware of it. And so they were looking at whether they could use that advanced signaling to somehow, improve the driving experience. And this is research. But I love using this example. If you were driving along at 50 miles an hour, a country road, and suddenly a rabbit jumps out in front of you. You've never seen this rabbit before. It's instantly jumps out in front of you. What would you do? Now, some people say, I'll just run over. It might be dangerous for me to react. But most people might say, I'll try and swerve and miss it. And I then say, well, would it surprise you to know that the rabbit is already dead? And of course, that gets that sort of reaction that you've just done. And that's because for complex signals which involve vision, some sort of processing, some sort of audio, and all those sorts of things, it takes a quarter of a second, let's say, for it to come into consciousness. Now, providing you've never seen the rabbit before, it's a quarter of a second. Well, at 50 miles an hour, that equates to so many meters and the rabbit's dead. That's how it works. Now, we don't have a quarter of a second delay in moving about normally. And that's because brain accommodates that by predicting what's going to happen. When we touch a table, we've predicted what it will feel like. When we're running, we're predicting already what it feels like for the foot to touch the ground. And so the brain looks for prediction errors. So if you just look at the errors between your brain's prediction, and what actually happens, it's a much quicker process. So we work on a prediction. So the great way of explaining this is you look at a clock with a second hand. Now, we know that the eye only sees colours in the centre of the eye, around the peripheral. It's just movement and those sorts of things. But we see this world. It's all in colour. It's all got solid objects and all of those sorts of things. But our eyes are always darting, which we can't see, but they're always darting to fill up that picture. So if we look at a second hand of a clock, and sometimes it jumps, or it seems to pause. And that's because where we predicted it would be isn't where it actually is, and there's a slight correction. It's brilliant.
Fascinating.
So it comes back to predictions. So in our lives, our past influences our present and our future. If we want to be more control of what we do, whether it's spending time online or swiping our smartphones, we've almost got to be mindful and step back. So we can say, oh, this is what I do all the time. That's interesting. So we slightly disassociate with it. And then we can do the things that we want to do.
When so fascinating. So thank you for sharing. So I love getting quite deep onto things, and the brain psychology, etc. Is excellent. I really love it. With the with remarks to someone going on that internal journey, I mentioned it's been profoundly impactful for me to do that. I wouldn't be here doing this podcast if I hadn't done it. I certainly wouldn't have written the book if I hadn't done it. And it's been probably the biggest shift in my life in the last 5 years by going on an internal journey. So I fully recommend it, but it is challenging, and it will continue to be incredibly challenging. What guidance or support would you recommend to someone else who's probably waking up to the point that they need to go on a bit of a journey?
So the advice is to get comfortable with getting rid of the comfort blankets. Get comfortable with being with yourself, with your own thoughts. Now, meditation is great for lots of people. Personally, I can't meditate by sitting still very well because I'm too active. But I do my meditation and mind wandering when I'm running. I've won the London Marathon so many times when I'm doing my training. It's unbelievable, but your mind wanders. So it's all about giving yourself the space to feel comfortable thinking. And the really important thing is you mustn't beat yourself up. You mustn't criticize yourself or any of the thoughts that you're having, or any of the mistakes that you've made. The past is the past. It doesn't matter. It's gone. What you can influence is the present. So almost have that mindfulness of separating yourself and saying, well, this is where I am. It's not what I like. I'm not the person I thought I was going to be or what I want to be. Okay, let's think about that. But not get so buried in it that you beat yourself up. So it's very, very important. If you want to make changes and you want to have a growth mindset, you really need that mindful separation so that you can think about where you are and then seek help. It might be your friends, your loved ones, seeking advice. It might be a mentor. It might be a coach. It might be just an acquaintance, a colleague at work. But be open to help, but take it constructively. Easier said than done, because someone might say, you hop along with one leg, that's a really bad thing to be doing. If you could walk more normally, that would be okay. And you think, well, I love doing that, It's just, so that detachment's really important and is very hard. I still get, if I'm criticised, like everybody else, I also think, oh, that's something. And then I have to say, deep breath. Okay, what can I learn? Whatever mistake or whatever doesn't go quite right, what can I learn? The other thing is understanding a process. If you start something and you do it regularly, you will get better. That's the way the brain works. That's the way the body works. That's the way evolution works. So you have to trust the process. So 6 weeks ago, I had to learn several thousand words for a play. I've done it before. I read it out and think, this is quite a lot to do. I separated it up into chunks. I did it in the way that I always do it. And with about a week to go, I put the whole lot together. And I did it Wednesday. And it was about 95% there. It's a process. So you have to believe in a process that things will work. That whatever age you are, you can always learn. And I love just saying to someone goes to a care home, they're quite elderly. Very soon they learn where their room is, where the kitchen is, who's in there, and all these other things, as long as they've still got most of their faculties, because they carry on learning. So we all carry on learning. It's just the process.
when you reflect on a lot of your life and you think about learning, I think this is an important point. You look back. Are things as bad as they feel? Is there opportunities in those moments? Because quite a lot of us will be feeling, have anxiety in the moment, or my boss has just said this, that's just happened, this has just happened. But the perspective, what you're sharing, this is why I'm interested, because you can look back on your life and your career. How much of it's just learning?
It's all about learning. People have to invest in themselves. I remember I spent some of my career in a wonderful company, loads of good projects. But the time had come for me to leave, and a good friend of mine, he moved on. And then I thought, I'm not ready. My mindset wasn't there. And I spent 2 years investing in myself so I was able to move on. So investing in yourself gives you that resilience. So we need to show up our best at work. We need to do the best we can at work because that helps pay the mortgage. It supports our colleagues. It gives us satisfaction if we do a good job and all of those other great things. But we also need to then look at, well, what am I learning for myself? I might get a promotion, or more likely these days, I might have to move to another job. So what skills do I get? And the same is true about, and I use the analogy with endurance athletes. Because investing in your own well-being and self-care, in certain circles, particularly macho type companies, it's seen as a weakness. And so the mindset of those companies is, well, if you need to take breaks or if you look after yourself, then you're somehow weaker than everybody else, which of course is completely wrong. But if you reframe it by saying, okay, so what do athletes do? They're able to focus on what it is they want to achieve. They're able to look after themselves. They get enough sleep. They do the nutrition. They get they do lots of rest and go. We can't work 100% all the time. But interestingly, they take constructive criticism. They learn from their mistakes. So if we flip that across to our working lives or our personal lives, more of a mindset of an endurance athlete. What am I going to learn? How can I improve myself? Because with AI particularly, it'll be very easy to outsource everything. So for example, we don't write our emails anymore because the AI is going to do it. A lot of our work, complex tasks the AI might be able to do it. So we outsource all those things. But if we outsource all of those things, we're less able to do them ourselves. And so we've got less resources to rely on. So investing in ourselves is about, okay, what is it? What are the things that I have to know? Or what I'd like to know? What skills would I like to have? And even if your present circumstances doesn't give you those skills, well, where can I learn those skills? The thing I love is in some jobs, because I do sport, just the way you stand sends a signal to people around you. It gives that sort of air of confidence because you're more comfortable in yourself. And that has lots of positive ramifications. So the advice is invest in yourself as well as showing up for your work and your family, because it's only if you're fitting well, if you're resilient, that you can help other people.
I love what you just said there in terms of looking at it like an endurance athlete, because firstly, life is like that.
Yes.
Really. And there's going to be, and when you think about what does an endurance athlete go through, well, they're constantly failing, they're constantly getting feedback, they're constantly in pain because they're trying to push themselves further. There's constant struggle, and then there's constant growth. And I think about that loop quite a lot, just in being a parent, having a new baby, going to work, new targets, podcast, all of those things, it just constantly, there's a constant evolution of all of those things. And I think there's that mindset of being an endurance athlete. What are they going through? How do you apply that to your life? I think is really different.
And the other thing is you always question your assumptions. I mean, we've grown up with some cultural bias. There are things that have always been there, always been done in a certain way, and we just accept it. We very rarely question them. But if we were to question them, we might find there's no sound basis for them at all. So I love the thing about age. I'm going to probably drop dead in some race when I'm 100, because I don't actually want the journey to end. But people think, oh, well, I'm a certain age, I shouldn't be doing this, I should do, and they get in that sort of stereotypical mindset. But if you look at the statistics, people are living longer. People are living more healthily in general. So if you're lucky with your health, and there is a degree of luck, and if you've looked after yourself reasonably well, or made that change at some point in your life, because it's never too late, then your view of somebody and what they can do at 60 was probably an assumption made when you were in your teens. It's not true anymore. That 60 assumption might be 70, it might be 75 now. So why is it affecting you? So why aren't you doing all these things? Why aren't you taking on new challenges? You're getting old before your time.
You're a perfect living example of this. Right? So,
I'm very old.
so you don't look it, number one, and number two, what did you do recently?
Actually, on my bucket list was swimming Lake Windermere. It's 11 miles, and it took me a little bit longer, just under 6.5 hours. But I was sick twice on the way. You try not to drink water, but of course, you do.
Yeah, just talk about that for a second. That's just such an incredible thing to have done.
But it's so. A while ago, I had a shoulder injury. It was quite serious, and the X-ray showed that the bones were too close together, and they tended to inflate. So I thought all hope of doing long distance swimming, was gone. But I love swimming. In fact, I didn't have any medication. I was offered steroids or some more permanent treatment. I said, look, it's taking so long to get here. I can swim. It doesn't cause me any grief. And I don't lift heavy weights, so I can manage it. And then I started to say, well, I can swim okay now. Let's see, push the distance. So slowly I pushed the distance. I did the swim-a-thon, great event for charity, 5 kilometres. And then I did some 10 kilometres open water. With triathlon, I always used to do longer distances anyway. And I thought, well, I've got no niggles. Let's revise my expectations of what I can do. And a friend of mine who I trained with swam the channel, and he did Lake Windermere, and he said, "This is it. You just have to sign up." So I signed up, and the arms were fine. I was so glad when it finished, though.
So when it's getting really tough, listen, I'm not a great swimmer. I've never been a great swimmer, but I can align it to, I'm a good plodder for running and endurance running. What's going on in your mind? Because I always thought when I was running, this is more about the mind than it is about my body. Is that the same in your situation?
Because I'd done 4 Ironman triathlons, all in the UK. I did the first ever UK Ironman in 2005. The last one I did was 2014. So it's been a while since I've been in that really. I'd done 10 kilometre swims, but I didn't think much of those. That was all within my capabilities. But in the middle of Lake Windermere, especially crossing the middle bit, and it got very choppy. And I'm thinking, God, this is much harder than I can remember. And something that came to mind, I was lucky enough to interview a friend of mine who rowed it in the Atlantic, in a two-man boat. And I interviewed him partly because it was such an amazing thing, and he was a friend. I said, look, we just record it. So I hadn't done podcasts, I hadn't done anything. I said, I'll bring my cameras and we'll just record. And I remember him talking about all the blisters on his hands. I thought, how on earth did you keep going? And he said, I remember the charity I was doing it for. He was doing it for charity where children, their skin just blisters and they can't touch it. It's horrific. And then he said, what I'm feeling is nothing. So what kept me going on the swim was I was raising money for a passion of mine, which is nature. So I was raising money for the National Trust to plant trees. We don't have enough trees, so I was raising money. And all the people that sponsored me, and the cause, and the fact that the cause meant something to me, kept me going. So that's what I mean by sometimes you have to create environments to help. The environment was, I didn't want to let anyone down. It wasn't about me and how I felt. I'd never not finished anything, apart from once where I was the last person to be picked up by a lifeboat. But that was only because he asked 3 times.
What a story. How much of you say you created the environment and then you created a level of intrinsic motivation, which is you won't let yourself down, you won't let them down. There's something that you've connected to, which is it just has to, it's in your mindset at that point, which is this has to happen.
Yes. And it is, some people, probably myself included, will race faster if I'm part of a relay than if I was doing an individual event. And it's that extra boost you get from being connected with other people or a cause that you really believe in. The body always tells you well in advance that what you're doing is hurting. You'll know this when you're running. The first few miles, you think, oh, it's a bit hard. And the body tells you that. But you know that you can go another few hours. I did the local half marathon, because it'd be rude not to, because it's local. But I'd only trained on 6 miles. And I'd done the swimming training, but I hadn't done much running training. And I thought, I've done lots of half marathons, I'll survive. I just have to manage that I don't go off too fast. And I knocked 30 seconds off my previous year's time, because I started slower and then I started to overtake. And I don't know if you found this, overtaking people makes you feel so much better. And it's not a nice thing to say, but it does. And it's that sort of confidence. It has an enormous part to play.
Yeah, but I actually found with running, the first 25 minutes to 30 minutes is actually the hardest.
Yes.
Because it's just like your body's saying no, and your mind is like, well, we're just getting started, of course we're going to run. After I always remember there was a point around 40 minutes, 45 minutes. It's bizarre because it takes you time to get there. When actually it's around that point where I remember just being really in flow.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm really not thinking about it now. There's something else. Like I feel like it's a subconscious part of the brain which is taking over, which is this is just a rhythm. We're going. 10 minutes has gone by, 15 minutes gone. I'm not checking, I'm listening to a podcast or I'm just in nature. But it takes you time for your body to get there.
Yes.
To almost for your body to tell you no for long enough to actually realise, no, we're doing this.
And also you're distracting yourself with the podcast, or in my case, mind wandering. And this comes back to the fact that we can't pay attention to everything. My wife trained for a marathon. And in the training, there was this minor hill. And she got it into her mind that she would walk up that hill every time. She couldn't get up. So a little while before the hill, he said, I know what you've just done. So So you can't pay attention to everything. But why that is really important is if you can't pay attention to everything, you can only remember what you pay attention to. So our attention is a very scarce resource. If you spend all your time online being a follower rather than creator, all of your experiences will be online, and that's what you'll remember. So if you want to remember family, friends, experiences, and all those other things, then that's where your attention should go. That's where you should balance your attention. So we all have to be online for work and for communicating with governments and various other things. And it's that sustainability by balancing it with offline. And something I researched yesterday, when you watch television programs that you're really interested in, and let's use the hit series Traitors, for example. I didn't watch it all, my wife watched it all, but I got hooked towards the end. It was lovely. Did you notice anything unusual?
I haven't watched Traitors.
Oh, you haven't watched it?
No,
okay.
no.
Or your favourite. The thing that was unusual was that none of them had their smartphones. So I checked and looked at all the gossip, and apparently, if you were to be a contestant on Traitors, the first thing they do is take your smartphone away. Partly because of security, because they pre-record it, and they don't want the result to be known. And then they give you a very dumb phone, which you take, if all those people listening to the podcast who watch Traitors, they go to a Scottish castle. And then they take that phone away from them. And so the program that you watch people having conversations, okay, it's edited, people having conversations with other people, because that's the interesting story. And all your other programs, what you don't see is everybody on their phone not looking at anyone else, because that wouldn't be interesting. So I thought, oh, brilliant. So if you're ever lucky enough to be on a program like that for 3 to 4 weeks, it's a digital detox because you haven't got your phones with you.
And they're out in nature and they're communicating.
Absolutely. Very intensely. So when we're watching our favourite programs, we're not watching people on their phones. There's always that picture where someone's looking into a picture frame of somebody looking into a picture. So nobody's looking at themselves almost, looking at their phones with the next person looking at their phone, looking on the phone with the next person on the phone. Because to be honest, that's not very interesting. And it's not interesting for us, and it's not interesting for other people to watch. So if you want to be, get involved in your favourite television programmes, just notice that they're not always on their phone.
And actually, sometimes watching your favourite programme is you're watching something that's got action or it's interesting to you, and obviously it's because they're doing a thing. They're not, as you said, they're not on their phones, which is not an activity you would watch. Maybe that's a future Gogglebox version. But you're right, you're watching someone doing something of interest, and it sparks your interest in that thing.
Yes. And because it's a story about other people doing something with other people, perhaps in nature or wherever. And that's what's interesting. And if you want to get the most out of life, whatever spell of life you have and whatever hand you're dealt, it's trying to get all those interesting things which involve other people and exploring new things and always trying to challenge yourself. Always going outside your comfort zone. Because everything just takes practice, really. Whether it's public speaking or doing a sport or doing anything else.
There's something I'd love to get your perspective on, if that's okay. Especially we're talking about the digital detox, but I think what I'm about to share is far bigger than that. So there's quite a few people that I've interviewed on the podcast that have been their coaches, but who they're working with is like dads, so their fathers, number one, So they're married, they're fathers, they're successful business people. And a lot of these people have been working towards their top end of their career. So they're successful business owners or they're in leadership positions. But they found themselves, I'm interested in your perspective as you can reflect because you've been through this. I'm interested that, some of these guys are late 30s, 40s, 50s, right? And they've worked, if you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they've worked to this point where they're self-actualizing in some respects. But they're feeling stuck. And if some of that feeling of stuckness is there's just so many people, there's mouths to feed, there's the people at home to support and love, but also everything's getting harder at work. Budgets are tighter, we've got to increase profit, we've got to all of those sorts of things. And there's a narrative of those guys around 40s, 50s. I sit in that as well. When you reflect back on your life, you're a father and a husband, and you've had a great career. Is there any advice that you can give to someone when they're in that part of their career and they're feeling a bit stuck?
Yes, and it's going to be the hardest thing because it's counterintuitive. You have to invest in yourself as much as you invest in all of those essential things. I did a life-saving course. And the first thing in the life-saving course is you've got someone in the water. What do? It's your own safety first. So if you want to be as successful in your career and in your personal life, throughout the duration, then it comes back to this very sort of simple idea of endurance athlete. If you're finding it tough, and the hardest thing then is to then say, I'm finding this all tough. I now need to invest in myself. So you need to do that investment. So a friend of mine, lots of things were going on in his life, and he had time to recover in the prior conscious, because it used to be called the breakdown. But he came out of that, and he's a very good friend of mine, and we were going to go for a run. And he came to me, his face was red, the whole problems had come back. And I said, look, we don't have to run fast. We'll just go for a run. And we chatted during the run, and we were in nature, we got to the top of the hill, and he said to the top of the slope, I feel so much better. And there's a simple reason. It's because the mind and the body are connected. We're not separate. The brain's not separate to the body. They're all integrated. And language is integrated with how we move about and survive on the earth. So what had happened was that we had physically moved some distance. And because our language is about physical movement, problems seemed further behind him because it physically moved forward. There's lots of expressions, put the problems behind you and all that. But the reason why it means something is because our language is about that movement as well. So it's counterintuitive. It's very, very hard. But if things are feeling really, really tough, that's the time to kick in the investment. And you might not be able to do it by yourself. So you'll need a friend, a colleague, maybe a coach.
Can you just define for me the words invest in yourself? What do you just define that for me?
I would do exercise and sleep. So we all know that if we miss a night's sleep, we're rubbish the next day. We really are rubbish. And a lot of our capabilities deteriorate very, very fast. But if we've got a lot on our mind, it's hard to sleep. One way of encouraging sleep is by exercise. Because whatever the problems you have in your mind, because a lot of problems to do with work and other things, they're of human creation. It's society, it's culture, it's all of those things. It's all in your mind. But when you do physical exercise, your body takes priority. So if you've got an ache in your leg, you know, your arms hurt or something else, and it acts as a reset. And then after you've done the exercise, you've almost created a space for, you know, to look at your problems again in a more mindful way. So it worked for me. I'd always resort to physical exercise to divert the mind, you know, into being a complete person again, a mind-body person. That's because I can't meditate. And I would challenge most people to meditate. If you've got all these other things going on, the mind would be too noisy. You know, go and do some really hard exercise, providing you've got no underlying health issues. And if you have, you obviously have to seek medical advice.
Yes, interesting. Just great advice, really great advice. And I regularly train in the gym. The days that I train, you always have far better days.
Yes.
There's no question.
Yeah.
I've actually started putting in like a mini workout just before the evening starts, just a really quick 10 minutes. And I think because I didn't understand why it was working, why it was making me feel better in the evenings, but what you've just said is exactly it. It's because your mind is putting the body as priority. So if you've just done an arm or leg or something workout, the mind is thinking about that, not about the anxiety of the day or the thinking about the day, the things that happened. It's just almost like your mind is creating space for you.
Yes. And if you're a musician, the focus that musicians give to their instrument does the same thing. So it takes your focus away on something else. So I don't play my piano that often, so it's the exercise for me. But there's something. It could be a hobby. It could even be if you're a model train enthusiast. It doesn't matter what it is. It's that something that takes you away. It could be your dog, taking your dog for a walk, and giving your attention to the dog. So there's lots of things that could work for lots of different people, but exercise is not for me.
Yeah, agree. Mine's exercise as well. So if someone is feeling stuck in some respects, it's almost return back to, I call it the foundations, but maybe some other people might not agree with that. But the foundations for me is exercise, nutrition, sleep.
Yeah. And because everyone's different, that sort of happy place may be different. The happy place could be actually being with your friends, having a good gossip. But whatever the happy place is, because it's the distraction that's the important thing.
Such an interesting conversation as a so far. What would you say, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is an important point here around the digital detox and well-being?
So just to re-emphasize that for us to live sustainably in the technology world, it isn't about giving up technology. It's about creating the balance. And creating that balance means taking lots of rest and recovery breaks. So if you want to show up as your best, whether it's work, with your friends, with your family, doesn't matter, then you need to be present and you need to give that your focus. But like athletes, we can't train 100% of the time, so we need rest and recovery. So if you've got a period of strong focus, being present, then you intersperse that with rest and recovery. So if you're online, particularly, then and you need to focus on something important, then take a break. And the funny thing was, this is not new. There was something called the display screen requirements in the 1990s, before smartphones, and it's still in force today. And it says employers should ensure that their employees take regular screen breaks. And the idea then was all about eye stress. And it's still in force today, except that everyone's forgotten about it. And the other thing really is, just challenge yourself. Go outside your comfort zone. If you practice something, you will get better. So something that appears impossible today, if you break it up into small steps, and you celebrate the success of those small steps, then you'll get to the big goal. I love the idea of New Year's resolutions. And I advise people to do it because it allows you to sort of think ahead and what is it you really want to do. But break them up into small chunks. Otherwise, you won't achieve them, and you won't move forward necessarily. So everything is small steps. And it's a journey.
I'm going to ask a few questions if it's right, but
Yeah.
just because it can be completely selfish for some guide I'm thinking about. As I think a lot about longevity.
Mm.
And you said something earlier which really resonated with me, which is when you're 100, you're going to be doing races.
Yes, I stand, to be honest, if I'm lucky enough to be healthy, there's less competition, and I stand a chance of picking up records.
I often joke with my wife that I'm going to do marathons at 100, and we were having a conversation the other day. I think I did some research. I think the oldest person to do a marathon is in their 90s or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It was a while ago I did this research. And then we also got into having a conversation. Now I've got 2 boys. I'm a dad of 2 boys, with little Luca, who was just a month old. Was one of the conversations we were having, which was, when I'm 80, I want to beat them in the gym. They'll be 40. That's one of my goals, is that I want to be able to beat them in the gym when they're my age and I'm older. Well, any advice, guidance on longevity? What would you be recommending?
So if you do masters, particularly in swimming, because you do lose strength, and you do a lot of training to minimise that, but your times get slow. But every 5 years there's a new age group, so there's a new incentive to be the best. So the Essex Championships are quite soon, and I hope to get a place. But really, I hope for my times not to get any worse. That's really the thing. So it's about focusing on what is it you can do, and what makes you feel good. And if you're lucky with your health, and you're doing the things that, you're keeping your mind active, keeping your body active, train not with people your age, but people who are more or less the same level as you. And swimming's wonderful. I train in a lane of people that are more or less the same standard. I just happen to be your oldest. So it's this mixing different ages. So if you have the opportunity of running with your sons, it doesn't matter. They're going to beat you sooner or later. It's just wait. My son has recently become faster than me, which is a bit annoying. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But yeah, mix. Don't get stuck in this age thing. So a friend of mine, school captain in football, rugby, did the marathon, good time, and all the rest of it. He plays golf. With people of a similar age, and we still go have lunch. And when he gets up from the table, he goes, "Oh my knee, oh my knee," and I'm saying, "Do you know what? I'm going to set you a challenge." You see, when I get up from the table, I don't say, "Oh, you've been mixing with old people too much. You've got that in your mindset. You're not old. You don't say, 'Oh my knee.' You say, 'Oh, I can still play a good round of golf,' whatever." So yeah, don't get stuck in this. Don't have one foot in the grave before it's your time.
It's like you have a very positive mindset to these things. Do you have to cultivate that mindset, or do you feel like that's naturally who you are? Is it something you've had to work on?
Yes. So everything has to be worked on, and same with digital detox. I can get into the same bad habits that I once have if I'm not paying attention. So it's a continuous journey. With the mindset, it's to be able to take that step back and say, I didn't react to that the way I would like to react. Or perhaps I'm not doing this thing because I'm making some assumptions that I shouldn't be making. There's no foundation to those assumptions. So it's a continuous journey. It's always hard work. It's the difference between real life and online stuff. There's no instant gratification generally in real life. It's the journey that's more important than getting there. And life is a great example that you don't want to get to the end, but you want to, the journey, you want to be as healthy and as active as it can be, given the hand that you've dealt and given the environment you're in. Hard work. Enjoy the effort.
Is it then a lot about, you said hard work there? Because I think, again, that's what I often think about, is this the struggle, the pain, the growth. And then I often think about, is this happiness? But then there's joy. And I think when I start to reframe my mind, it's, well, I get joy from going to the gym. I genuinely, deeply like it. I love it. I like to be there. I like to train. So I think a lot about, well, filling your days with like positive joy. So walking is a positive joy, journaling is a positive joy, going to the gym is a positive joy. But also those things will help me with longevity, with my body. This is almost like reframing, which is all the things that actually are positive, eating fruits and vegetables, those sorts of things, reframing those of, well, this is just part of my foundations, part of what I do.
You can't be happy. You know, this sort of mythical happiness all the time. It's quite a rare thing to be absolutely happy, you know, when you get married or when your children are born. So you can't be happy all the time. So if you do the things that are consistent with who you think you are and with the values that you have, then you've almost got that sort of inner glow. Though you might say that's happiness. But laughing at a joke with all your friends, incredibly hard, you know, that might be real happiness. So if it's consistent with who you think you are, or who you'd want to be, and the values that you have, then that's that sort of inner strength. And I think sometimes if things are inconsistent with that, that makes us unhappy. Yeah.
Do you, throughout your life, do you feel so, we'll start like that again. So a lot of people go, I just want to be happy. Just want to be happy. Like the most profoundest thing in the world, you just want to be happy. And I just don't think it works like that. It's just nothing like that at all, because there's just so many other emotions and feelings and thoughts and everything else that happens. Do you feel like it can come, it can go?
Yeah. Well, I'll use an example. I'm lucky enough to, we'll be celebrating my 40th wedding anniversary.
Well, congratulations.
Which is quite unusual now. And that's because it could be laziness on my part, but that's because being married is a lot of luck, but there's a lot of compromise as well. There'll always be times when you think, oh, that wasn't, you know, I'm not happy about that or this and whatever. But actually, especially with our children, there's bigger things to worry about. But it's so nice not to have to worry about being married. I'd hate to go dating. I mean, the stress that would cause. I mean, who would have it? Anyway, but yeah, I wouldn't want to go do that. It's much better buying flowers for your existing life. Which reminds me.
You know, the topic to ask you about. So I'm nearly 6 years into marriage. What does it take to get to 40 years?
It's a lot of hard work and effort. Exactly the same as everything else.
Yeah, love that. Love that. It's been such a wonderful conversation today. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really great.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm so glad I chose to come and do this face to face. It's so much better.
Yeah, it is. It is. When you do something like this face to face, it is remarkably different. Yeah, it's great. If someone wants to know more about you and get in contact and work with you, where's the best way of getting in contact?
So this is the funny part. So I do digital detox, and now I'm going to say The website. We have to be online to live in the current world. So on the website, you can see some free resources. There's a lovely resource called Digital Detox Couch to 5K. It takes the principles of the great NHS app, Couch to 5K, and it's a free download with digital detox challenges, and no data is collected. So you just download it. Also, there's links to other podcasts. There's links to the TEDx talk, which I'm very pleased with. And there's contact there. So whether it's a speaker event, a podcast, an article, workshop, or coaching, you can contact me there. And you can book discovery calls. So just click the link and do that. And it could be a really interesting thing to do, to work with someone. But you could also work with your friend, a best friend, a colleague, whatever would motivate you to make the changes that you want to change.
Love that. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.